Hello, everyone, and welcome to all the members and followers of the Legal Operators community. We're really excited to share with you our presentation, Stay in Step, the 5 must-have workflows for legal operations. I'm Stephen O'Donnell, the head of product marketing at Mitratech and your host for today's event. I'm so happy to see everyone here today. Before we dive in, I do want to go over just a few housekeeping items to help the webinar run smoothly. We are recording today's session. Following the session, we will send you an email with a link where you can access the recording on demand, which will be available on both the mitratech.com and Legal Operators websites. We do want to make sure that we get through the content that we've prepared for you, so the audience is on mute. If you have any additional questions for us, please submit them at any time via the Zoom Q&A feature. We will follow up with you individually if we run out of time to address them. If you have any technical difficulties, please let us know via the Zoom chat feature so we can jump in and assist you. So over the past 4 years, I've had the pleasure of witnessing firsthand the incredible results that workflow automation can deliver to legal teams in terms of productivity, cost savings, corporate responsiveness, and overall business resiliency. I now have the pleasure to introduce to you 2 of the key individuals that enable those results for our clients. First off, we have Brian McGovern. Brian is the general manager of Mitratech's Workflow Solutions business unit. Brian's incredibly passionate about improving efficiencies within organizations and uses his Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt certification to bring real quantitative value to an organization's functions. Prior to coming to Mitratech, Brian served as Senior Vice President, Legal Chief Data Officer at AIG, where he led the transformation of the company's legal operations department and played a critical role in creating the organization, processes, and technology architecture. Brian's experience and familiarity with many different legal management and workflow platforms provides Mitratech a unique opportunity into how our clients think about technology broadly. Welcome, Brian. We also have Varun Ghai. Varun is a solutions expert with Mitratech. He works closely with the legal and compliance teams to learn what challenges they face and develop solutions to help alleviate the manual nature of these business processes. Varun has extensive experience with supporting workflow solutions and is looking forward to sharing his findings with you today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Excellent. Thanks for getting us started today, Stephen. Varun, looking forward to the session with you. So our agenda today is we're going to give a little background. We'll keep that pretty brief so we can get right into the 5 workflows that we think are most relevant to customers these days. And we're going to end with some questions. So please put them into that question function so we can get good content at the end. It always makes it more exciting. So what do we hear when we're going around talking with some of the leading legal departments across the business areas? There's no standardization of how processes are implemented across the business. That's because email is by far the #1 most utilized workflow tool by any company presently, although we're working on changing that. And it's simultaneously the worst workflow tool. Email just makes things impossible to have consistent processes. #2, it's difficult to be on top of changes to processes. All of our companies are really large. We work with some of the largest, most complicated legal operations groups in the world, and they're continuously changing. It's the most consistent part of doing business is it's changing all the time. And traditional IT processes have a lot of trouble keeping up with that. Challenge of keeping track of requests and their statuses, especially when you're working in emails or integrated systems that are not updated. It's really difficult to figure out where things are. And then there's really limited visibility of management information. When you've got things hidden in antiquated systems and emails, you've no possibility of reporting in dashboards. So what's the way forward? How do companies do this? You need a solution that's easy to implement and use, that provides a standardized approach. You need processes built out iteratively with no programming. No code and no programming is a key foundation of great workflow automation and really agile process. You need automated notifications and a centralized view of the status with full audit trails. So you need a single place to go. Where are the key places that you go look for opportunities for workflow automation? Number one, high volume, repeatable, and with predictable variations. So that's any area that you've got a lot of requests coming in. What's the most frequent thing coming into your group's mailboxes? You're looking for emails with approval chains, especially emails that seem to go on with no clear end in sight. Anytime you've got people sending emails and then tracking data in spreadsheets, you've got a double whammy. That's just a horrible job to do, and automation makes it so much more efficient. And if you require audit trails, it's really obvious to bring that into a tool that allows really rapid time to value and also will deliver automatically an audit trail for you to go back with. Legal operations is at the center of business continuity. It's a dynamic world that needs to keep up with ever-changing businesses. It is mission critical. Keeping the legal function growing and delivering value to the business units is critical in every organization. It's at the forefront of digital transformation. Allowing tools, especially during this time of the pandemic, really stood out how rapidly teams relied on their digital transformation, and most people really expanded. There's new standards. Of course, there's new standards. All of our businesses are rapidly changing. There's new regulations, new standards, new lines of business as your businesses are growing. It's cross-functional. By definition, legal touches all of your business units. So having tools that allow you to reach across functional divides and do so repeatedly with really consistent process excellence is critical. And it needs to be adaptable. Businesses are changing all the time. And I think the most clear thing is change is just going to keep accelerating. You need a great set of processes and tools to deliver that. The 5 critical must-have workflows right now, and we're going to go through each of these in a little bit of detail, and Varun's going to give you some demos, is first of all, the legal services portal. Single place for the business to come in, get information they need, self-serve if they need to, or land critical information if they can, and at the very least, be delivered to the right person to help them, and that person gets the right information they need to help them immediately. Second one, self-service NDAs. There's still a significant number of people who are suffering behind negotiating every single NDA that they do. It slows down their business. It slows down their innovation. I'm going to show you it even stops some agreements from going forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then Varun's going to give us a demo on that one. Vendor onboarding is one that's really growing in popularity recently. It's a key way to have an orchestration engine that allows you to coordinate all the different activities across a variety of business areas, including governance, vendor risk, IT, security, and allowing all that to orchestrate through one tool to get a really consistent and fast time to value. Conflicts of interest, very popular workflow for our compliance friends, managing that, rolling them up, managing exceptions. And last, probably the most rapidly growing workflow in the past year has been what people are doing in diversity, and Varun's going to give you a demo about that too. The legal service request. Legal team members are constantly being asked by people across the organization questions. Some of them are, hey, I need help with this. Hey, I need advice on this. Hey, we got sued on this. Hey, I got papers on this. It's a ton of information. And traditionally, that had been done very ad hoc. So people stopping by your office, people sending, or probably more typically, people sending emails, and very typically, people sending emails to the wrong person. It's very difficult, especially in large organizations, to know what to do when you need legal's help. And what does that lead to? You get emails that go to the wrong person. They don't have the critical information you need to actually fulfill the request. Look in your email box right now, and I bet all of you have some email that's gone back and forth between 3 to 10 people but it's 20 email replies deep, and nothing actually valuable's happened. That's a great example of when you need workflow in a legal services portal. So things take too long, and there's no process metrics. So you get these fights between the legal department and the rest of the organization. You take too long No, we don't. You know, what's the direct value you need? And the solution is to provide a really easy to use portal for different types of common legal requests and get those benefits of how many requests we're doing. You know, it's great for a legal department to say, listen, we fielded 500 requests a month for the past year, and our demand is growing up. That's why we need more automation. That's why we need more investment. That's what the value that we're driving back to the business. And also for the legal department to say, what kinds of requests are we doing? What kinds of expertise do we need to have? What can we be automating? How do we automate these high volume, low complexity things, and so that we can concentrate on the high value add, more bespoke items that's really critical in a big legal department. So the solution is to get that easy to use portal. Great, thank you, Varun. Next one, SelfService NDA. Great case study there on the bottom that you should check out while I'm talking. I really like that last part of one, where originally only 50% of NDAs were actually executed. Now 85% of them are. What's it mean? What's the challenge? Teams are consistently requesting non-company NDAs to review and go through cycles with clients, prospectors, vendors, and trying to figure out, why do we need the NDA? What's important about this deal? Why is it critical to do it? And then we go into, you know, what can be a black hole of negotiations. We're going back and forth. We're arguing the same points over and over again. We're doing red lines for things that don't really matter. For example, somebody spelled an entity, chose the wrong legal entity, or put in the wrong address, or put in terms that just don't even make sense for the particular NDA to be negotiated. So the key to deliver here is a self-service NDA. It's a really guided experience. It allows the user to specify what they're looking for, use company paper, and focus on things that are not going to get consistent pushback. We all know that, you know, it's the key terms that we get pushback on every single NDA. Nobody ever signs. So let's get something that actually makes sense, deliver the NDA so you can focus on what's really important on it, which is driving business value. Varun, do you want to give us a demo on self-serve NDA, please?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So let me go ahead and move us over to a demo portion of this, get some product in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump into our self-service NDA. So before we jump into here, let me just set the stage real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually initiate the NDA from someone that's internal to the organization. So I'm going to fill out some high-level information about that particular counterparty when we come in here. Let me go ahead and just add in Austin, Texas here from Mitratech. But as we fill out this high-level information, what's going to happen now is it's going to go ahead and move over to my counterparty. So you really have the opportunity to leverage this tool, not just within the organization, but also outside the organization. As my counterparty receives it, which is going to be Brian in this case, I'm going to be accessing the email as Brian on my side in a second. And then you'll be able to see how the counterparty gets the entire experience of that self-service NDA right within the portal. So as we go through that, you'll be able to see how some of the functionality within TAF starts to leverage things to make it a lot easier for the individual to come in and actually fill this out. One of the quick things here is we can start to enable things like conditionality to drive the user down one path or another. So for example, if we ask them, why are we disclosing this information? It starts to only expose fields as necessary. So you really aren't having to inundate your users with all these different fields and all this different data that's not even going to be relevant to them when they're coming in and filling out these portals. The other great thing too is that you have the opportunity to start to leave guidance notes and hover tips, things like that throughout the form, so you can ensure that you're always driving to that 100% data that you want to get, that clean data coming in, so that when you do inevitably go run these reports that Brian was talking about, you can see the data that you want to be able to see. You're not having individuals accidentally fat finger, or you're not having incomplete data sets. So by enabling this type of information up front, you're allowing the user to get all the information they need without having to go back and forth a number of times between themselves or the counterparty and then the person that's actually initiating this request. Today, what we'll do is we'll go through this general purpose here to explore that NDA. So we'll look at a relatively simplified version of it. But the great thing here to keep in mind is that everything in here is completely configurable. And when we jump into a different workflow a little bit later, I'll show you what I mean by that. But it's very easy to set up. It's all drag and drop functionality. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later too. Now that I've submitted the information for my counterparty, what I can do is click on the submit button, and a couple things are going to happen here. So first, I'm giving the user here, the one who's actually initiating the workflow, I'm giving them immediate feedback and saying your request has been submitted. So I have the opportunity to see that it's going through. It's not just falling by the wayside, and something's actually being done about that particular request. What also happens now is an email notification will also get generated to that counterparty. This email notification is also completely configurable, so we can change the design, the look, the feel. We've seen our clients get really creative with these email notifications in these portals, almost to the way that we don't even recognize them as our own product anymore. So it's really impressive what they've done to brand it to their own organizations. But you can see there's some high-level information here about what Brian needs to do as a counterparty, saying that he has a new NDA that's out there for his approval now. So what I can do is click on this review NDA, and what it's going to do is take me into the actual portal side of Brian here as the counterparty. The great thing here is now, instead of having to take that email and have to insert the information all over again and try to figure out what Brian put in here, what the initiator put in here, I can have the opportunity to see all the information they put in as for Brian here. So things like the company's name, if Brian knows as the counterparty that that's not the legal name of the organization, he can come in here and make a quick change and say, you know what, we're actually going to use Mitratech Incorporated here. There are other things here that we've locked down. So you can see Brian's not allowed to change his own email here to be able to come in and mess with that data. So if there are certain pieces of data elements or confidentiality that we want to hide or lock down, we can make sure to do that pretty easily. Now, the great thing here, especially with the NDA, we've seen a lot of innovation around how NDAs are done with our clients in these different portals. One of the things they've started to do is create almost two versions of this NDA. One that's much more straightforward if someone in legal generally is reviewing it. So if legal's in here, they can come in here, review this classic version, and it's going to go ahead and pull up that NDA for that legal individual. And you can also see it's dynamically inserting the pieces of information in here that are relevant to me for this particular NDA. Something else our clients have done is they've created an alternative version that's more for business users, but already approved for legal. So if someone on the counterparty side is coming in here and doesn't need all the legal language, but is still getting the message, we have more of a simplified version of that NDA that we've seen some of our clients start to leverage, and also seen a little bit in the industry now too. As we scroll down, the other great thing that our clients are starting to do with these NDAs is give the counterparty the opportunity to have some leverage without having that whole redlining back and forth. So what I mean by that is I can come in here, and at the bottom, you can see that there's the opportunity to be able to add or change some language or maybe some clauses based off of pre-approved language for legal. So if I come in here and check that box off, I have the opportunity to change minor things like the governing law or the term length here. So things that are already okay in your organization to be able to change, but you give the counterparty the opportunity to do so right within that portal. And as I do so, you can see it's going to go ahead and change maybe the state that's being governed from, or maybe how long the agreement is valid for. So little things like that give you the opportunity to start to change this information pretty quickly and easily. Other things our clients are starting to do there too is pull in whole clauses sometimes. So if you ask an individual, is there going to be some kind of intellectual property exchange here? Then if we say yes, it's going to now pull in an IP clause that's more relevant to that NDA versus something that may not have been there before. And maybe now also route to an IP attorney that reviews this who may not have been involved in the process before. So a lot of that automation is actually happening in the back end without the user ever having to come in here and do anything to make sure that it gets routed to the right people. For some of our more complicated type contracts, some of our clients do want to be able to track redlining and document versioning, things like that. So they do have the opportunity down here to upload their own NDA here. Obviously, we won't see it very much with NDAs, but for some of those more complex contracts, you can start tracking that right within here too. Now, once I've actually agreed to these terms as the counterparty or made the changes and I'm satisfied with it, I can once again click the submit button. And what's going to happen in our case now is it gives my counterparty the opportunity right within the portal to be able to go ahead and e-sign that document. So it goes ahead and generates a PDF version of this document, and then I'm able to come in here, review all the changes that have been made, and then be able to come in here and sign that document just like I normally would within any particular e-signature tool. Tab does have out-of-the-box functionality or integrations with both Adobe Sign and DocuSign. So I can come in here and sign the document just like I normally would within any of those tools. Great, Brian, I will pass it back to you now to go ahead and start continuing or on the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Varun. Great. Workflow number 3, I mentioned before, we're really seeing a lot of growth in is vendor onboarding. How to simplify our intake, share information across the enterprise. So what is the challenge now? We have a whole bunch of systems, especially large companies, that are doing vendor onboarding different ways. In fact, you may have different parts of the business doing it different ways. You have different business divisions doing it. And they all have their own unique requirements. They all have their own forms. Compliance will have a different one than vendor governance, who might have a different one from InfoSec. There's a never-ending set of requirements and forms. And frequently, what's tying them together is all email, which has all kinds of problems from compliance, people missing things, employee errors, missed fields, names spelled wrong, not in the right place, and cross-functional reviews that are completely discoordinated. There's nothing guiding the process in general. In fact, emails and humans are chasing things around. Just not a good combination if you want to have really consistent, clean processes. So what's the solution? You want to streamline that onboarding and get the correct vendor information to each of those individual groups in a parallel enterprise-wide workflow solution that makes sure that you have compliance for internal and external policies and the onboarding protocols you follow are complete. Great quote from a senior manager of legal operations on the bottom. The opportunity to develop and share ideas on workflow to improve and to, if not eliminate, the heavy effort, high volume, low risk business processes in an organization. Next one, conflict of interest, one that we very typically see in compliance functions. And a great headline, we're seeing people cut out over 85% in the reduction they spent on conflict of interest approvals. What's the challenge here? We have a manual process that resolves around spreadsheets and emails. And when you see spreadsheets and emails in your organization, I really encourage you to think about workflow automation, business process improvement. It's a really low bar, and it's so easy to make a dramatic improvement to people's jobs, get some really quick ROI. So all of the spreadsheets and emails make all this manual update. You have firms and outside counsel are annoyed. They have to wait for their work. Sometimes it strains the relationships. It strains the business conversations. So how do we do this? What's the solution? You get a self-service forms that allow employees and outside firms to submit details of any conflict of interest. Bring it to the right person. If you do have conflict, how you bring it to the right person instead of sending it to an email to a bunch of people. You can keep reminding people that they haven't filled out. You can get reports too, how many people have filled it out, how many haven't, how many have conflicts, what are the typical conflicts, and you can use that to improve your process, saying, well, people identify this process a lot. We approve it every single time. Do we really need to have humans approve it? All sorts of insight that you could just never have in your current email and spreadsheet. I think the case study on the bottom again is really interesting. Conflict of interest waiver went from an average of 35 days to a completion of 3.5 days. A 10x improvement, and reduce the average time spent on a conflict by 85%. I mean, think about how much capacity that company is freed up on something so simple as conflict of interest, but we've made it really unbearably complicated by the tools we were using to solve it. Great. Huge explosion in diversity review in legal operations in the last year. Fantastic to see it's coming. It's something in legal operations we've been talking about for 10 years, and we suffered what to do with for a long time. Should we do it by the firm? Should we do it by the timekeeper? How do we let people opt in or not opt in? How do we collect the information securely? How do we deliver that in a meaningful way back to the business? How do we report on it? What are the best practices? So there was a lot of discussion about what should we do, and that took a long time to resolve. And then we didn't have really great legal frameworks to allow people to have protection around their personal information and have the right to delete it and things like that. So we needed some legal frameworks that have come in the form of CCPA as well as other international standards. So what's the challenge? We don't have a way, we didn't traditionally have a good way of collecting this diversity. And we didn't have a really clear idea of what was best practices and what was the right legal framework. So how do we do it securely? What information we think about our metrics? What's the best way to integrate this? And the solution is to capture and record that relevant diversity data, either at the firm or probably most popularly right now, the timekeeper level. And it allows our internal users to simply field indicating whether there is or isn't a diversity metric met. So that means the type of diversity the person identified to need not show up in your system. It's just a diversity yes or no click, and you can use that to feed into your reporting. Varun, would you give us a demo of what this looks like, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So jumping then to our next demonstration here. So to set the stage for this particular demonstration, I'm going to actually access the system as a timekeeper here, access the portal as a timekeeper. The way I actually initiated this particular request to the timekeeper is actually something interesting a lot of our clients are starting to do too. So our clients are starting to leverage our matter management tool, and within the actual contact record for the different timekeepers within there, they're actually initiating these surveys from that other tool. So it really speaks to the power of TAP to integrate with other systems and be able to launch from other systems. Another example, to Brian's point too, another example, one of our clients who's actually utilizing the system for the conflicts of interest, they actually have an integration right to their HRIS system. And whenever a new individual joins the organization, it automatically sends them a conflicts of interest request and says, hey, you're coming into our organization, go ahead and disclose anything that may have happened. So it gives a lot of opportunity to be able to link in and leverage the functionality of other systems and fill in any of those gaps that those systems might have. Coming in here as a timekeeper, I've actually launched that survey to this timekeeper, and it's, again, letting me know it looks a little bit different than the other email we saw a little bit earlier. But when I come in here to view this particular survey, you're going to notice that this survey is going to also look and feel a little bit different than what we just had for the individual on the NDA side. So it's a lot more simple here, but you can see it's already filling out my high-level information. So I know as a timekeeper, I'm coming in as Dennis. It's giving me all the information here, just a quick message as to what I'm looking for, what I need to disclose. But the great thing here is that this survey is also an annual survey. So the system is automatically firing off this survey once a year to all my timekeepers and saying, hey, it's time to update your diversity information. Has it changed for the timekeeper? Has it changed for the firm? And it's also coming in here as not displaying the data that was shown the year before, input the year before. So what this is really allowing you to do is start maintaining some of those regulations like CCPA or like GDPR and saying, you know, we don't want this person to accidentally forward this on to someone else. And then now we're in violation of the fact that we're exposing diversity information to someone else. So it actually just starts out not filled out. But as I come in here, I can fill out or not fill out any one of these different fields as this diversity information is captured. One of the great things here, and one of the things we've found a lot of our clients utilize, is you'll find a lot more adaptability for these types of portals if you have a much more straightforward question and answer type thing, so that they're not having to come in here and fill out a number of different fields here. But as I fill it out and I hit submit to actually send that diversity information over, a couple things are going to happen in this one that's a little bit different than what we saw before. So first, what you're going to see is that I have a number or a token that gets generated here. And this is, again, one of those things that really allow you to take advantage of being able to have this information come into your system while maintaining adherence to CCPA. This timekeeper can now come to you or come to the organization with this particular token and say, hey, I want my results removed from your database. And because they're tied to this security token when they submitted that survey, it gives you a really quick and easy way to come in here, search that individual's responses, and then scrub them for your system to adhere to that CCPA request. So you're not having to go through all these hoops and all these approvals, everything like that, to make sure it does tie into this data. And that's something that we found, a lot of our clients have found value in really fast because of how difficult it is today to be able to scrub data like that from their systems. Now, the other thing that happens here is within our matter management system, where I'm going to jump into now, we'll also have an update to that particular timekeeper inside of that matter management system. So here I land on just one of my dashboards. It's just giving me high-level information about different pieces of data within my system. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over to that particular contact just using my bookmarks. So right here, my timekeeper, Dennis, is marked as one of my favorites. So I'm going to jump over to his record here, and you're going to see there's actually a tab for his diversity details. So now what it's done is it's actually updated the values of that particular timekeeper based off of that survey we received with them, and now embedded it within our matter management and e-billing system. And here I do want to point out, you're going to see that it told me that it's been updated today. And what some of our clients now are starting to do is they'll have a field like this that allows them to say that there was some diversity claimed, but then because of, again, regulations or not exposing too much data, we can hide what exactly that diversity was that was claimed. But now when you do those reports or submit that information, you know that there is some diversity within that firm or timekeeper that we adhere to. Some of our more innovative clients are now starting to take this diversity information and actually do a lot with it, because that's the other half of the tool, the aspect, right? So once you get that information in, what do we actually do with it? Some of our organizations, what they've started to do is within this matter management system, because they're doing so much else within it, they're actually able to take this diversity information and start to associate it both to matters and also to the e-billing aspect to it. So for example, they can run reports such as, how much are we billing on a timekeeper level based off of diversity line item by line item within an invoice? Or how many firms are we utilizing that are minority or female owned, right? So those types of reports that they're actually able to generate and now get insight into give them a lot of power to make decisions to make sure that they go forward to be more inclusive to these different firms and timekeepers. Great, that's everything I wanted to show you here. I'm going to actually pass it off to Stephen now, and he's going to go ahead and wrap.
Brian and Varun, thank you so much for the presentation and demonstration. Really fantastic. Just a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions, please type those into the Q&A feature and we'll get to them. I already see a couple that were typed in during the session. Brian, let's start with you. This one is really appreciate the use cases highlighted today. Are there others that you're seeing as important or relevant currently?
Yes, there's really just hundreds of use cases now for workflow automation, and they're so diverse. It's probably one of the most interesting parts of my job is learning about new and interesting ways that people are using the tools. So we have people using it to manage their actors in entertainment companies. We have people using it to generate legal documents. We have people using it to do the inbound security in their lobbies. We have people using it to manage herds of cattle head, what they're going to do and what the cattle head's going to be doing next. It's really, the range of diversity is just unbelievable and so much fun to talk about. But what I'd really encourage is, I think the most important thing to learn about that is there's a wide range of things to do in every company. And what's important to your company is go look at those usual suspects. Where do I see lots of email? Where do I see people complaining about processes that don't run efficiently and everyone complains about it, but nobody ever does anything? Where are those pockets of spreadsheets that are people doing this manual effort? How do we get people out of that manual, what they've now taken for granted? We're making them do this horrible work. They take it for granted. And how do we deliver a tool that makes it much more efficient, much more automated, and delivers much better results for the entire organization?
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Here, one more for you, Brian, here. It's clear that legal operations needs to be able to have and own its own workflow automation application. However, our company has other workflow tools. What is the best way to approach getting buy-in to get this with other groups in IT?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of organizations have some sort of historical workflow tool. That's not what we're showing you here today. We're showing you a no-code, rapid time to value, a highly configurable tool that allows you to demonstrate and deliver real life and almost real time adaptability to your business. So what's the key to get here? It's talking about building workflows and making changes in workflows in hours and days instead of a traditional IT or a traditional program, which are months and quarters. So think about what a difference that means in your day-to-day job where, hey, I have to add a new department or I have to add a new approval. Do you want to do that today and have it in production tomorrow? Or do you want to have that in production, July of next year? There's just such a giant step change. And being able to very clearly articulate why that's important and why that speed of innovation is critical in legal operations makes it very easy to make a decision to invest in the right tool.
Yeah, thank you. Varun, this next one is for you. What's the best way to get started when you see clients adopting this? Do they usually leave it to someone in their team, or do they hire someone specific to work in the tool?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. What we see most commonly is that the individuals within the department itself, oftentimes legal in our case, is the one that actually owns the workflow. And this is music both to them and to the IT ears, right? So you're not, like Brian just said, you're not having to go to IT anymore and say, hey, can you make this change for me? And then they have to put it in their backlog, and then you have to wait months or quarters for that change to even get implemented in a little bit. One of our clients, what they do is they actually have something really innovative. Now that they have a really good hold of this product, what they do is they actually have a team that's specifically around being able to create new workflows and improve processes in the organization. That team just goes from department to department. They sit down with someone they know has a process that can be improved, and then essentially build the workflow on the fly with them and say, hey, here's what we can do with this. And every time we hear from them, they're like, the team is always so impressed that they were able to do it so quickly. So it gives you the opportunity to really own it yourself instead of having to go out to another organization or even to come back to us as Mitratech. So all the power's in your hands there.
Excellent. Brian, I'm going to serve this next one up to you. What are the keys to standing up a product like Tap quickly?
Two things. Get your SSO turned on quick. So that's a huge amount of value. Fairly easy to do. Get your SSO requirements and stand that up quickly. That's tremendously valuable. Step number one. Step number two, don't sit around in conference rooms and write Word documents. This is a new tool. This is a new way of thinking. Get in the tool, map out your workflows, drag your forms on, do it together, do it dynamically, build it in front of your group and iterate to that. And I think the third key is don't overthink them. The most successful groups get it generally right. They launch it, they start using it, and they're like, oh, well, we forgot this field. No problem. You can drag on a new field in about 2 minutes and have it live for the next iteration. So don't overthink this. Don't try to make it perfect out of the box. get it directionally right, and then iterate to the truth. Because you don't have to be, traditionally in IT, you'd be really worried about, is this exactly right? Because if you miss something, you're not going to get a fix for 6 months. And so you got to break that thinking for your team. And you got to say, no, if we miss something, no problem. We can add a step, we can add a field, and we can do that in minutes, or maybe at most it's a day. It's not 6 months from now or a year from now where we're going to get your fixes. So don't use a new tool and a new way of thinking the old way. Update your thinking to the new way. Drive value fast.
Excellent. This next question's related, but I'm going to switch it over to Varun because I know he has built a number of these workflows himself. What are some of the learning curves when building and implementing a new workflow or process?
Yeah, that's a good question, Stephen. So when you're building these out, like Brian said, you generally find more success when you do it with someone who's done it before. So we'll help you with some of these initial ones, because there are, obviously with any system, there are a little bit nuances like that. But really, you want the main thing you want to be successful when you come in here is just getting a good understanding of what are those simple data elements that you want to be able to capture. So when we were looking at our NDA, things like, who the counterparty is, what their email is, do we want to include their address, those simple things like that. And then also the general flow and if there's conditionality or when it dries. So, the NDA gets submitted, we know it's going to go to an attorney. Well, actually, if it's going to be an IP clause, then it's going to go to an IP attorney. So those little nuances can catch you a little flat-footed if you aren't aware of them. So it's generally a good idea to have that ready to go before you put it in the system, and then you have a good opportunity to really, like Brian said, get the foundation really strong put in there, and then iterate as you need to going forward.
Thanks. Let me see if we have any others here. One more. Brian, what is the right way to calculate ROI, return on investment, for something like this?
Yeah, what I love about business process automation is it's really easy to calculate ROI. So go in and find out how many of these requests that you're doing a year. You're doing 500, you're doing 5,000. You're going to say, how long does it take us now? And it's going to take a long time because you don't have to measure them. You can just talk to people, say, hey, Varun, how long does it usually take for you to do an NDA when it gets to you? Hey, Steven, how long does it take for you to get the language right? How many of these did you renegotiate? Because the numbers are so startlingly bad. It doesn't like, don't worry if it's 4 minutes or it's 5, or more likely 4 days or 5 days. Don't worry about tiny little things like that, because the numbers are so overwhelmingly awful that you're going to go from months down to hours. So don't sweat the small things. Talk to some subject matter experts, get some estimates, say what, and don't let them get into, well, sometimes it's really long, sometimes really short. What usually happens is right vernacular. Sure, there's highs and lows all the time. What usually happens, get directionally right numbers, calculate how much time you're going to save, multiply how many times a year do we do this by how many hours we save, calculate how much on average you pay people in your company, and it's big numbers. The first couple of times you're going to do this, you're going to be surprised at your ROI of, you're going to have ROIs in months, as compared to traditional IT projects where you might have them in years. So taking a simplified approach, ask people what usually happens, do some really simple math, and off to the races. That's going to be one of the most fun things you do in these projects to get them started.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I'm checking here and I do not see any other questions. However, I would just finish off by letting you know that we want your questions and we would like to talk to you. And Mitratech wants to co-innovate and partner with you on workflow automation, which we think is just so critical and foundational for legal teams and legal operations today. Please feel free to contact us at info@mitratech.com or give us a call, visit our website. We would love to connect with you. So with that, once again, Brian and Varun, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope everyone has a fantastic end to their day and work week.
Thank you, everyone.